Hello Year 12. Welcome to our third topic for the HSC. This one is called the Search for Better Health, and basically it focuses on different aspects of health and also disease, including infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. Our first dot point that we're going to look at is discuss the difficulties of defining the terms health and disease. So when we discuss, we need to identify the issues with defining these two terms. So a bit of a background. Humans have obviously always shown a lot of interest in the state of our health, okay, which we really need to be able to do to provide good treatment and medicine. If we don't show interest, then we don't know why things go wrong and we don't know how to fix them. The presence of symptoms is what is basically showing us that a plant or an animal isn't functioning properly for whatever reason. And there can be a whole variety of different symptoms for a whole variety of different diseases and health issues. So health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But there are problems with this definition. There are problems with pretty much every definition that can be thought of for health, because health can vary from day to day, and it can also be more than just the absence of disease. Health is made up of so many different components. It includes our physical health, our mental health, our social health. Some of those are very subjective and depend on different life circumstances at the time, and what can be considered healthy to some people might not be considered healthy to other people. It can also vary from day to day, and the standards for health, as in what can be considered healthy and what can't, vary a lot with age and susceptibility to disease and things like that. So some symptoms that might be present in people who are, say, over 80, they can still be considered healthy, whereas somebody who is 12 years old, if they presented with those symptoms, then they might not be considered healthy. Health is a constantly changing state, and it's relative to others and also to ourselves over a period of time. So, for example, a person who is physically fit, doesn't have any diseases, would generally consider themselves to be pretty healthy. Whereas a person who has a disability or a chronic disease might still describe themselves as healthy, because they've adapted, they can cope, they're still apart from whatever it is, they're still living a healthy, active lifestyle, and they can carry out their everyday life and carry out normal functioning. So they can still consider themselves healthy, even though in comparison to other people, they may not be considered healthy on the same level. So our next thing we're looking at is disease. And disease is defined as any condition that adversely affects the functioning of an organism. Again, there's some problems with this definition, and it's really hard to get something that's right and covers everything exactly as well. So this definition was really broad. It's very imprecise. So if you look back at any condition, other words, so it even would consider a teeny tiny cut to be some form of a disease, whereas we generally wouldn't consider it a disease in our everyday life. And it's also possible for a healthy person to have a disease if they manage it. So, for example, cystic fibrosis, they can be generally quite healthy as long as they're managing their disease. Because it's describing a state of impaired functioning, it also depends on the plant or animal's normal levels of functioning and what they would expect their normal quality of life to be. So all these other varying factors as well that, again, are really hard to put into some sort of definition for the word disease. So, for example, pregnancy can adversely affect the functioning of the mother's body, but generally that's not considered a disease. We don't, generally be talking to somebody who's pregnant and consider that they have a disease, even though under that definition it could be considered as one. Also, conditions that would not normally be classed as diseases could be. So say if you had a broken arm, that could, or you need glasses to read or glasses to see at a different distance, that would be considered a disease under that first definition. But we generally, again, don't consider those things diseases. So very different between different individuals. So our little summary to wrap this stop point up. The definitions of health and disease are very broad and imprecise. They don't take into account the dynamics, lots of different components, and the subjectiveness of health and disease. Old age, so what's healthy for an old person might not be healthy for a young person. Health is definitely a relative term, and it's always changing and relative to others as well as ourselves at any given time. Disease can be present in a healthy organism, and different organisms, even of the same species, will differ in health, susceptibility to diseases, and the ability to respond to homeostatic fluctuations. So there's our first stop point. Enjoy.